Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. And now, your host, Adam Huntsman.
Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. I'm your host, Adam Huntsman, and this is the story of Adam Cruz and his hunt for a public land do-it-yourself mule deer in Montana. Okay, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show, and I am your host, Adam Huntsman. Today, got another awesome mule deer hunting story for everybody, and it was just a really awesome conversation with another gentleman named Adam, actually, and I personally really connected with this story because Adam, first of all, he has the same name as me, so obviously he's got to be a cool dude, and secondly, he is also an Eastern hunter like myself, and obviously I can't speak for all Eastern hunters, but if you do hunt the East, chances are pretty good that you've at least thought about, going out west and, experiencing, Western hunting and hunting mule deer and hunting elk. And Adam, living in Tennessee, actually went through and, took the plunge, pulled the trigger, and went out and, was able to be successful on a do-it-yourself mule deer hunt in Montana in, I believe it was 2015. So very cool story. But either way, with all that in mind, let's hop into the episode. This is episode 11, Adam Cruz and his hunt for a public land do-it-yourself mule deer in Montana. Okay, and on the phone with us today is Adam Cruz. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Adam?
I am also doing great today. You're actually the first other Adam ever to come on the Huntsman's Journal podcast, so congratulations.
I appreciate it. I'm glad I'm the first.
Hey, me too, man. So we've been talking for a little bit here, trying to get you on the show. So I'm glad we kind of got things to kind of come together tonight. And I'll have everybody know that Adam had a flight issue this evening, and despite landing late, he was still able to make this call. So again, thank you very much for coming on, sir.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. But either way, today, like I was saying a little bit ago in the intro, Adam is going to be telling us a little bit about his do-it-yourself public land hunt in Montana for a mule deer. But before we actually get into the story, Adam, why don't you go ahead and just tell everybody and tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So on the hunting side of things, I grew up in a family where hunting was just part of our culture. Growing up in southern Middle Tennessee, lived on a farm where my great-granddad, he owned quite a good bit of acreage, and we had plenty of places to roam, and the county I lived in had plenty of public land, so it was just really awesome to kind of grow up in that situation. My dad, as a kid, he was deer hunting, he was squirrel hunting, he was coon hunting, just a part of life. And anyways, I just always kind of grew up with that. As I was a kid growing up, I was always looking forward to that age 10, because that age 10 is when I would be able to actually go, take a rifle in the woods myself and go on my first deer hunt. And so just kind of give you a little background of my personality, even as a kid. Like, I'd go in the summers and I'd just snap in, dry fire, waiting for that one moment to where when that first deer walked through my crosshairs, I'd be ready to go. And sure enough, first morning juvenile hunt when I was a 10-year-old kid, my dad took me out on this place. I was actually with my best friend, and we're stomping cutovers on some public land. And really kind of a cool story that people do this out west too. They'll go up into these drainages or these canyons and throw rocks. And we were doing the same thing, just big hill country out in Tennessee, throwing rocks down in this big holler, and ended up running a buck out of there. And sure enough, man, putting the crosshairs on him, squeeze off, and then that's kind of how my hunting career, if you want to call it that, started out. And really ate up with deer hunting for the next 3 or 4 years. Never even thought about turkey hunting or anything else, just a deer hunter. And then all of a sudden we started having like turkeys come on our farm where I was growing up, and I went out that spring, had no clue what I was doing, had a call, didn't even know what a gobbler looked like, and I start yelping on that call, and sure enough, like a few little jakes come up, right in shotgun distance, and I couldn't tell that. I didn't even know what a Jake was or how to identify one, so I didn't shoot it.
Yep.
But that's kind of, I've been eat up with turkey hunting ever since. And one thing led to another. My uncle, he actually is, he's been going out west for years and years and hunting elk. And as a kid, I would always like sit around and listen to his stories and listen about how he would go elk hunting. And when they kill something, just getting me all amped up. So I started buying, the bow hunter magazines, reading some Dwight Shue and people like that. And that's where I think like at the next level for me of hunting really took off, was that desire to want to go out west and to hunt really big game, mule deer, elk, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where the desire started there, but took a little break from hunting and joined the United States Marine Corps around the 2001 time frame. And at that time, even then, like when I joined the Marine Corps, I was thinking about hunting because during boot camp, we signed up for savings bonds. So I remember sitting in boot camp and I'm figuring up exactly to the penny what it would cost me to go on my first elk hunt. And I took out of every paycheck towards those savings bonds to go on that elk hunt. And sure enough, so when I got out of the Marine Corps, my uncle, he took me out there, and it totally ruined me. When I heard that first bugle up in Colorado,
yep.
There's just nothing like it. So kind of went through a little dip in my hunting passion after that, I would say. I moved back, home after the Marine Corps, killed really some good deer, and just kind of, life kind of got in the way a little bit. And then work led me back out to North Carolina, where I met one of my friends, Chris, and we were sitting down having dinner together. And Chris says, what do you think about going out west and hunting with me and a few other buddies? And I was like, man, I don't even know if that's possible, with time restraints and work. And Chris just kept on plugging it. And finally, I just bit it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go home, talk to the wife. And sure enough, I went home and was like, hey, this is something I really want to do, and I want to do it every year. And she gave me the thumbs up. And so that's kind of my passion, I guess you'll say, in life right now, as far as hunting is concerned, is how can I get out west every year and do that, whether it's mule deer. And really, I'm really ate up with elk hunting, but I know today we're going to talk a little bit about some mule deer.
Hey, I mean, any kind of Western game, I'm always down to talk about. I mean, me being from the East as well, I can definitely relate there. Where it's like you said, man, you go out and you hear that first bugle, or for me, it was the first time I remember landing in Denver and just hopping on that main road there and just looking up and seeing the Rockies like out in the distance. You're just like, man, it just gets in your bones, like, and you're just hooked and you're ruined whenever you come back home,
Oh, yeah, sitting up in a tree stand in 10-degree weather for hours and hours and days, just waiting on that deer to walk by. It's not as fun for me anymore.
Yeah.
I stick with it.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, for like anything else, it's kind of like, no matter what, if you're hunting, I'm enjoying it, but there's just something about hunting the West where, like you said, it's just, I feel like everything's just a little bit more magnified, where, the scenery is a little bit, more, the game is a little bit more, like everything's just a little bit of a notch up from anything that we'd be hunting around, on the eastern side of things. So it's definitely addicting, that's for sure.
Got that right.
Yeah, but I tell you what. So then, I mean, you kind of gave us a brief breakdown there. That first trip, whenever you went out west, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? You said that was for elk, right?
Yeah, the first trip was for elk.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you? We can touch on that for a little bit. Why not? Yeah,
sure. That trip, I literally depended upon my uncle and kind of my cousin for all the information. Really, to prepare. I knew that I would be in shape. I was a Marine. Of course, I was in shape. But like gear, I took most of my military fatigues and had a really low-end backpack and stuff like that. So as far as preparation, I wasn't prepared at all. And that's one thing that I figured out, for the next times that I knew that I would want to go, is be more prepared. But we ended up, I said my uncle, he's been out there a bunch of times, and he knew where to go. He knew an outfitter that he had talked to in the past, and the outfitter kind of put us in some of the right directions on public land. And sure enough, I mean, we weren't up on the mountain for an hour, and we had elk all over us, and we stayed that way for the entire week.
Nice.
It was just a matter of, as whitetail hunters, and my uncle was being the good guy, letting me and my cousin go first, trying to make that kill. And we acted too much like whitetail hunters. We made the mistakes of, moving too slow and trying to be too quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, an elk, they're a loud animal. They're a fast animal. And, you got to trick their eyes and you got to trick their nose, but you also have to get in there on them. And we made that mistake, and we didn't end up putting a tag on an elk that trip, but we literally stayed covered up in elk the whole time.
Oh, that's awesome. Were you hunting with a bow or a rifle?
Bow.
Oh, cool. No, that's definitely makes it a little bit more complicated. And like you said, you got to kind of close that distance. Yeah, very cool. Now after that, have you, again, I know we're talking about mule deer here, but in that same vein, it's all kind of Western, DIY kind of stuff. Have you gone back out for elk since then, or have you just kind of been more eaten up with the muleys?
No, actually, I'm 100% elk on the mind and brain. So this past year, I actually went back to the same exact mountain range and unit that I hunted with my uncle about 10 years ago. So I took my brother out with me, just drove out there with a tent. We had good gear this time, high quality gear. We were prepared. However, the elk did not cooperate. We literally only heard a couple of bugles the whole time we were there. But one of the times we actually got right in on an elk. We didn't make the mistake that I made the first time I was there. We were aggressive, got in there. I just believe the wind shifted on us, and that's just something you have to deal with in the mountains. You got to outsmart the wind, but that's kind of hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then there's always a million factors that kind of go into it. So like you said, you could even do everything right. And if the elk aren't there, they're just not there, just how the game goes sometimes, I guess.
For your listeners, when I make the decision to go back elk hunting, this past year I went at the very first of April because we didn't have a choice. That was the only dates available for us to go. But the time before, we went right during the Colorado muzzleloader season. And so really the elk are just then kind of getting ruddy, if that's what you'll say, getting ruddy at that period of time, and that really through the end of September. So as I plan my future elk trips, it's always going to be September 15th and on. That's me personally and from what I experienced. It really is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for kind of sharing that little bonus story with everybody there, Adam. Let's go ahead and switch gears and start talking about muleys. Now, the hunt that you're going to be telling us about, this was not your first mule deer hunt, correct?
No, actually it was. It was my first mule deer hunt.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. So the first time going out and hunting muleys, you were able to get it done? Yep.
But I was not picky. So when I went out there, I made the comment because we were in an area that had some pretty decent whitetails in the river bottoms, and we talked to some BLM landowners and stuff like that around that area, and there were some really good whitetails. But I made the comment: if I see a 180-inch whitetail, I will not shoot it, but I will shoot the first little porky that I see. And, that's, without spoiling the story, that's pretty much what happened.
That's hilarious. We talked a little bit about this off air, but for everybody else, I've kind of alluded to the fact that I'm kind of toying around with the idea of doing a DIY mule deer hunt myself this year. And dude, that is exactly my plan. If I do actually pull the trigger on it, I'm not going to be picky at all. Literally to me, any mule deer would be that's just a trophy no matter what, just for, we just don't have them around here. So that's just funny kind of. I wonder if that's an Eastern thing, where it's like, we don't have them here. So no matter what, any mule deer out there is going to be awesome.
I think so, because some of the residents out there were like, man, are you, because we talked to them, and they're like, are you sure, the meat will be better on the whitetail? I was like, I don't care. I want to chase me some mule deer.
Yep.
And actually, we enjoyed the mule deer better than any whitetail we've ever had in my house. So that was surprising, because I did kill that mule deer in sagebrush country.
Yeah, I've heard that anytime you kill the mule deer in the sagebrush, they basically just taste like sage.
Yeah, which was not the case for this deer. Not at all.
Nice. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
How did you, I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but real quick, how did you, as far as getting the meat back, was it just, you froze it, put it in a cooler and, flew it back, or were you, I'm sorry, no, you said you were driving, huh?
No, actually I did. I flew it back. So
okay.
I planned on when I got out there to just buy a cooler if I killed.
Yep.
And so I did that, got some ice. I flash froze it the night before too. I was able to get a freezer, freeze it, put it in that cooler, and it was perfect when I got back home.
Nice. How did you get the freezer? Was it just like a local restaurant kind of thing?
Well, we actually met some Marine Corps buddies in Montana for this trip. So when we went on this trip, we shared camp with multiple guys that we were all friends with and knew. And so when we killed, we ended up driving from southwest Montana all the way up to Kalispell, which is a long haul, and to my buddy's house, and we did all the processing at the guy's house. So it was pretty neat.
Oh, nice. Now I'm sure that made it a lot easier to handle then.
Oh, yeah. Never would I have ever imagined that I would have butchered a deer at his house before I went on this trip, but I got the deer off the mountain whole, and that's a story in itself.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I tell you what, like I said, I'm gonna start asking too many questions if we keep going any further, but I definitely want to circle back.
Okay.
We'll definitely circle back to that. But before we do, let's rewind and kind of start from the beginning. So we kind of got an idea of what kind of piqued your interest in mule deer hunting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the prep for that hunt, from, your gear, from, if you were doing any kind of, exercising, just, how did you actually go about getting ready for this mule deer hunt?
So to me, that's the biggest, the storyline within all of this is really the preparation that went in from going from east to west and not really having a clue what I was doing. The fact that you had to draw a tag, either that or find leftover tags.
Yep.
That was the first step, was looking at Montana, making sure I put in for that tag. I did draw that tag successfully, so that wasn't an issue. Mm-hmm. But then you get down to the gear, and we went in that November 1st time frame, which is really kind of a pivotal point, I guess, in their weather. Mm-hmm. So the weather changes very quickly. So I started thinking about, okay, what type of clothing? I don't want to go out there in all cotton and all, polypropylene or thermals like I normally have been wearing back east.
Yep.
So I had to really get down and dirty and looking for clothing. And I ended up calling and talking to KUIU. I talked to First Light. I got on Archery Talk and Rock Slide and all these different forums. And I really reached out and talked to as many people that had hunted Montana as possible to make the best gear decision that I possibly could. So I really, in that sense, I mixed and matched my clothing. I went some of the colder weather KUIU gear stuff, and then I also went with some outerwear from First Light. And really, both companies are awesome to deal with, gave me really great customer service. I just kind of want to give them both a plug and, both give veterans discounts. So that's something to know, too, for your listeners out there.
That's awesome.
And that's how I rolled with the clothes. And the packs, I knew, going in, most Western guys told me, hey, your two most important thing is your pack and your boots. So that's where I really wanted to be able to spend my money and make sure I made the right choices. And I ended up buying a Stone Glacier Solo, which was a great pack for what I was wanting to do. It's kind of a minimalist pack. It's very lightweight, but framed. And I just can't say enough good things about that one. And I ended up, for the boots, I went with some Solomon GTXs. And I'll get more into the boots later because, like I said, the weather changes very fast. And one mistake I made is I did not bring any backup boots on this trip. Well, I didn't bring any backup insulated boots because I knew we would be active. Just looking at the weather patterns, I thought, it would be mild. And if it was probably the lowest we would see would be in the 20s. And doing all that walking, I did not think I would need an insulated boot, and I was wrong.
Lessons learned, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I got into working out. Before I went, I was totally out of shape. I went from the first time I went elk hunting being in the best shape of my life in the Marine Corps to the worst shape of my life before this. And I got a buddy back home. He really just kind of took me under his wing working out. We started doing some CrossFit. And by the time I left and got back, I was probably back to my Marine Corps type shape. I worked that hard. I mean, it was every day and watching what I ate and just kind of changed my lifestyle. And that's been nothing but good ever since.
Yeah, no, I can definitely attest to that. Same kind of thing where, like you said, it's I exercise a lot, but it's with hunting in mind. So it kind of gives you that, like, to me, it's at least it's like you're working towards a goal. It's not like you're just going to the gym just for the sake of it. Kind of helps you, keeps you motivated a little bit. I did want to circle back real quick. I actually had a couple questions there, Adam.
Sure.
First of all, would you mind kind of, you had mentioned the tagging system in Montana and you were able to draw. Would you mind, kind of expanding on that a little bit? If it was a preference points kind of deal, or if it was just kind of a random draw. I'm not super familiar with Montana's regulations. And then also in the gear perspective, you had mentioned, really spending heavily on your pack and on your boots. I'd love to hear what you did in regards to glass and binoculars, spotting scopes, and that kind of stuff.
I went in debt. I'll kind of work backwards on the spotting scopes and binoculars. On this entire trip, I did not pay retail for anything. Everything that I purchased was on a discount or was on sale. I found deals, and I ended up finding a website. It's actually a New York-based company, and I can't think of their name off the top of my head, but they sell binoculars at demo, because they have demo products on their shelves. And I found out about them off of a Rock Slide, and I ended up buying a Vortex Viper, the small angled spotter, and I loved it. But I also knew as soon as I get back, I was going to sell it. So I did end up selling that, and I also bought some 10 by 42 Vortex Viper. Vortex Viper binoculars. I'm sorry, my spotting scope was a Razor. So I had the Razor spotting scope, the smallest one they had, so I could pack around. I had a lot of people ask me about that. I thought that was a good decision to buy that small spotting scope. For me, it was the right decision because we did so much hiking through the mountains that I wouldn't have enjoyed having something large on me. It was just the perfect size for what we were doing. And I put it on a Vortex tripod. So that's how I went with optics, and it worked out great. I still have the binoculars. I love them. I sold the spotting scope for almost exactly what I paid for it when I got back. Nice. That was a good deal too.
Nice.
Yep. As far as tags, that one really is a tricky situation when you go out west. I mean, you really have to dig in to the state, to the units. Do you have points? I did not. I had never put in for any points in Montana, so I was kind of in a situation where I had to find really not really over the counter, but a unit that I had really high odds of drawing in. And I was fortunate enough that in that particular unit in Southwest Montana that I was able to draw.
Excellent.
But that wasn't an issue at all.
Okay. So literally it was like you decided to go on this hunt and you were still able to hunt that year then?
Exactly. Yeah, I put in Montana closes up, like this past year, they closed their tag draws application process at March 15th. So I probably put in right before that time period.
Gotcha. Oh, good. I'm glad you were able to draw. Now, as far as the unit you were hunting, first of all, what weapon were you actually taking on the hunt here with you? And then you had mentioned you guys were doing some hiking in the mountains while you were up hunting. Would you mind describing just like the terrain for everybody, just so we can kind of get an idea of like where you were hunting and just kind of help paint that mental picture?
Yeah. So Montana, for those that have not been, is a really strange. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It goes from flat to mountains really quick, and it does it a lot. It's just a beautiful landscape. They call it Big Sky Country for a reason, because one minute you're looking out and you see like plains with mountains in the background, and the sky is just big blue and just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. And then when you get in the mountains, you can get up to that 9,000-10,000 plus feet, and it's just rugged as all get out. So as we were hunting, our first thought was to get high with the mule deer, because at that point in time, and from what we had read and the game warden we talked to, the biologist, kind of led us to believe that the muleys would be in higher elevations at that point in time of the year. But as the hunt went on, we actually worked our way down to lower elevations. So the first 3 or 4 days we hunted, I was probably hunting around 9,000 feet elevation. When I actually killed, I killed at about 6,000 feet elevation, and in sagebrush country, kind of more of a not rolling hills because it is still high, but that's kind of what it looks like.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, as far as, while you're actually out hunting, were you guys, were you backpacking in or how did you handle that?
We had a really great situation. The first couple of days, my buddy Chris and I, we got there before everyone else, and we had another Marine Corps buddy that was working in that area, Joe, and Joe brought his camper down, and we were able to utilize his camper for the first couple of days until our other buddies came down. And Joe, he went, on the hunt with us, but he was just there for a couple of days and just to kind of tag along for the hunt. And then after he left, a whole another crew, the guys from Northwest Montana, the Tops, they brought their campers down. So we were very comfortable in that situation. We found a campground right in the middle of the unit on this big, beautiful lake, like something you would see out of a Leonardo da Vinci painting or something. Just it was a masterpiece of scenery there. So that was a really good situation for us.
Yeah, geez, I bet.
And I did answer your question on the gun. I was actually I was going to fly out with my Browning A-Bolt 300 WSM, and before I made the trip, I made the decision to shoot my buddy's Chris's his Savage 6.5 Creedmoor, and when I got out there, I was able to side in and shoot that a few times so I could get comfortable with it. So that's what I ended up killing a muley with.
Gotcha. Yeah, and actually on that point, so again, I mean, just getting the weapon out there, we could probably, learn a little bit about that. But once you, did get there, where did you actually sight the rifle? And just like there in, the hunting land? Or, I mean, how did you do that?
Yep.
Just right there?
Yep. I mean, for us guys out east, we fight the problem on state lands of not being able to target practice.
Right.
But on a lot of these federal lands out west, you can. So we were able to, throw some targets up out to 200 yards, and that's kind of where I can shoot further than that. But since it wasn't my rifle, I didn't really know how much further I would go out, and I shot the deer within like 150, so it worked out perfect.
Oh, nice. What kind of, do you remember what kind of like rounds you were using as far as the bullets themselves?
My buddy, I think he's a big, I don't want to say. He hand loads everything.
Okay.
But yeah, he's a gun nut and a reloader, so the best of the best of whatever is out there for sure.
Yeah, obviously it worked, right? That's why I was asking, as I want to know what you were using so I could give it a shot. But very cool, cool.
He's actually building a gun for me right now, and he's going to put some, I think it's the Hornady Burger bullets.
Oh.
And I'm having a 280 actually improved built by him, so it's going to be really sweet.
Very cool. But you think he'll have it ready for this hunting season?
I believe so. I better. He's had it for like a year or something. I don't know.
Very nice. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. Okay, so now again, just kind of recap. We kind of have an idea of where what the area is like you're hunting, what your situation and setup is. You got your rifle. First day of hunting. Why don't you go ahead and take it from there?
And the first day, it was kind of like being back in Colorado. It was smelling the mountain air, being unplugged. I really can't even describe that and the feeling that it gave to me. But as we tracked along, we found all kinds of mule deer sign, but we walked and we spotted and we walked and we glassed and we glassed, and we just went all day and didn't see the first thing. And so kind of our first thoughts we're like, oh, I think we all had this assumption that going to Montana for mule deer and being willing to shoot any legal buck, that this might be kind of easy in some sense of the word. But yeah, we didn't see anything. And it went by a couple of days where the weather was just perfect, and we were, in mule deer country, but we weren't seeing anything. So what ended up happening is we had this huge snowstorm that came in that we obviously didn't know was coming. We're totally unplugged. Chris and I, we were going to actually backpack in and camp out that night on the mountain. We were going to go much deeper into the mountains and in search of muleys. And when we got there that morning, it started spitting snow. And it had to have been like within an hour, we had 8+ inches of snow on us. And we were just soaking wet.
Yeah.
I had my boots failed. Even though I took some precautions on waterproofing, they were leaking. By the time that we ended up getting back to the truck, my boots were ice. My feet, it was just a bad situation. So around that third or fourth day after that snow, we had to make a decision to go to town. I was like, man, we're gonna waste some time here because we could be hunting and I could be miserable, but I may actually get frostbite if we stay up here. So we went to town and bought a new pair of boots. And while we were at this farm store, just kind of talking to some locals, a guy I was speaking with was like, hey, we're struggling to see mule deer right now. And, we did all the research online. We looked at these maps over. We called biologists, called game wardens. We felt, we're all pretty proficient hunters here. We should be seeing some muleys. And he said, guys, you're at the wrong elevation. You need to get lower. And sure enough, we dropped 3,000 feet and we were in mule deer. So it was just like that, that little bit of pain and the weather kind of breaking, sending us to town really took our hunt in a different direction. And, thankful that guy was willing to share a little bit of information. So we kind of changed our strategy from looking at large tracts of federal land. And we started looking at smaller tracts of BLM land. And for your listeners out there, I mean, if you're looking for whitetails out there in Montana, that's where you'll find a lot of them is on those river bottoms. And that's kind of all we saw Montana as is the BLM side. We just didn't realize how much more there was to offer from the BLMs, and that's where we ended up finding all the deer. So we literally started into this BLM land, and there's a check-in box where you can see how many hunters have been into that place, since the beginning of the year. And I think we counted over 50 guys. And by that 1st of November, had already been into that area. So no doubt that place had taken some pressure. But we hadn't been into that part of the unit, and we were seeing mule deer right away. I was actually with another active duty Marine. He was with us on that trip, and we both carrying our rifles. But we saw a mule deer, a buck. It was legal. And I was like, man, he had to go the next day. I was like, you go ahead and take the shot. So he ended up shooting at that one. Didn't connect, but that's the unit we stayed in after that. So I ended up coming back the next day and hunted again.
Nice. Very cool. Whenever you were talking to the gentleman in town and he was saying that you needed to get lower, did he, why would he automatically say that? I mean, was it just like the time of year, or were they lower just because of the temperature, or, what was the reasoning for them being into lower elevation?
Yeah, and I'm definitely no mule deer expert or biologist, but as the snow comes in those higher elevations, it pushes the deer down.
Gotcha.
And that's what he was telling us. And we started seeing that too, kind of closer to camp. There were whitetails. There were nothing but whitetails close to us in camp on private land. And then as that snow started coming, the mule deer doe ended up mixing between the whitetails too. So he was right on the money.
Interesting. Well, that's very useful, Now, at this time of the year, then how were the deer acting? Like, were they ready at all, or what was like the general behavior?
Did not see very many bucks at all. The only bucks that we did see were bedded down with the does. And again, being a whitetail hunter, you expect when you see a whitetail and the whitetail sees you, the gig is up and it's over. They're going to bounce. They're going to be gone. Yeah. But that's not really the case with a mule deer. A lot of times, if you'll maybe just keep walking, the mule deer will lay low. They really are confident in their ability to blend in with that sagebrush, and they do a phenomenal job. That's how they survive. They just, they stay still, they stay low, and that's what we were normally seeing were bedded mule deer. We didn't see many on their feet at all, except in the late evening time up feeding.
Gotcha. Okay. And, I mean, as far as, just like the overall tactic, and then now that you've kind of moved down to like the lower elevation, was it still just kind of like a, covering ground kind of thing and glassing along the way? Or, tell us a little bit more about the strategy there.
Yeah, we were doing as much glassing as possible, but also at the same time trying to cover as much ground as possible. So we've wondered, I've personally wondered, hey, did we cover too much ground, or did we cover enough ground? And I think we've probably covered as much ground as humanly possible. If that tells you anything, we were really on our feet a lot, and then we would stop and glass until we felt like we had really combed the area over, and then we would pretty much get up and move. And we hunted daylight till dark.
Okay. So then at this point in the hunt, then you're what, 4 or 5 days in now?
Yeah, I only have, it was Thursday, and Friday was going to be my last day to hunt. So it was on the day before the last day.
Oh, geez. Okay. And that was, I'm sorry. So that was the day before your last day was when you were actually able to harvest the deer, or was that what we're up to now? Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell us a little bit about that then? I mean, I'm assuming, you glassed them up, how did that, all work out?
So it didn't work out like it was supposed to at all. So what we were
never does it?
Yeah, it never does. Me personally, I won't speak for Chris, but for me personally, I was kind of at my lowest point mentally by this time, just because I was really wore out, and we weren't seeing the mule deer that we thought we would. We were in this area the day before. There were mule deer everywhere. Now we're in that same unit, that same exact spot again, and all we're seeing are does. And I was like, at one point we saw I think 18 does together. Not a single buck in there. And I was like, man, maybe this place has received so much pressure that we're just not going to see anything. And I was kind of at the okay, I'm wanting to give up phase, and Chris throws out his arm to stop me from walking. He's like, get down, buck. So we both, dropped down in the good old prone position, as they call it, the Marine Corps. And Chris was like, yeah, man, it's a forky. I don't know if you want to shoot him. I was like, what? Of course I'm going to shoot him. So he was the muley. He was bedded down, got my crosshairs on him. And literally, as soon as I did, he just kind of stood up and gave me a perfect broadside shot. And here's one of the mistakes I made. I shot Chris's gun a lot, but I did not play with the safety features on the gun. Like a Savage is not like a Browning. A Browning, you flip that safety up and you're ready to fire. With the Savage that I was shooting, it actually has I can't remember what the 3-prong safety, and I was touching off on this deer, and nothing was happening. And then I was like, break down into the worst buck fever that a man could ever possibly have. So I'm shaking, breathing, and Chris is like, man, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, the gun just messed me up. So I need to regather myself. And this is not like me. I've been hunting for 20-something years. I've killed 156-inch whitetail. When I killed that deer, I didn't even have buck fever until I shot. This is totally abnormal. And so anyways, I end up getting back up on my pack. The deer's still standing there, giving me every chance in the world. And I ended up making the shot and getting the deer. So that's kind of how that all played out. Everything on that trip was drama filled, I think.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. Like you said, anytime I've ever hunted a new species, it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really matter how big it was. It does something to your mind that like you said, it just adds that whole new level of excitement to it. So like you said, breaking down in the buck fever over a forky muley, man, it's just wild.
Oh man, you think about it, and after I made the shot, it was like this relief went over me, because it was like this whole story of 20 years of wanting to go out west, of thinking about it, reading about it. And then for this moment to be there, which I worked up to all year and thought nothing about, and it was a little overwhelming emotionally, honestly.
Sure.
Not too many times do I get emotional hunting, but that was a pretty emotional moment in my life.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, like you said, that's a lot of anticipation built up to one moment, so it only makes sense that it's going to be an emotional, event. And speaking of the whole emotions of the hunt, so you make the shot. How do you feel after that?
Honestly, man, it was I don't even know how to describe it. It was like relief. Hey, we got the job done. I felt really a lot of gratitude towards my friend Chris, who didn't even have a mule deer tag, who tagged along with me this whole entire trip, who had to watch me freeze out. It was just there's no way to really describe it. Just relief, I guess, and just thankful I had the opportunity to be there. Thankful, that I could be able to do something like that.
No, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's, like I said,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal. Especially, I feel like us Eastern guys, we tend to not idealize but fantasize about the West a lot. And it always just makes me really happy hearing anybody who's got that same passion, that same drive, and that I'm talking to you who's actually gone through and done it. Like that's just awesome. So kind of moving on, you've got your deer down. You're leaving the next day. How did you proceed from there?
Well, the guy, Brian Top, the resident of Montana, he actually had an elk tag, so we elk hunted the whole next day on Friday before we took off, and we got some snow. We packed up our deer. I'm not sure that everyone in camp that had a tag put a tag on a deer. The rest were white-tailed except for Brian. He killed a mule deer, Forky as well. But it was just a very successful trip. Came home with a lot of whitetail and mule deer meat. It was just really great. But one thing I will mention is we made one mistake in trying to get this deer out whole.
That was what I wanted to hear about, right?
I bought this really expensive Stone Glacier solo pack, and I'm all like, juiced up to use this thing. And after I shot the deer actually ran down the mountain towards the road. He fell literally in the road. Now we couldn't drive down this road without permission, and probably couldn't have got the truck down there anyways. So that's a whole nother story in itself. But we had this bright idea to knock or find an old dead tree, and we lashed the deer to this tree after, of course, field dressing it, and we walked I don't know how many miles with this deer on our back, and I literally go to the chiropractor every month because of that. I've seriously injured myself doing it. So if you kill a deer and you think you can get it out that way, just put it in your pack. That is my advice.
Jeez. Yeah, that's good advice. Oh man. I guess
save you some money.
Yeah. I guess if you gotta hurt yourself hunting, at least you're hurting yourself, after a successful hunt. But jeez.
Think about that trip every day.
I can imagine. Yeah, it's I had a similar issue with my shoulder dragging a doe up out of this gully. I shot her. She ran. I shot her in the bottom of a gully. She ran further down into the gully, and I had to drag this thing out probably 200 yards up out of this thing. And I wound up pulling something in my shoulder, and I couldn't shoot my bow for like I want to say it was like 6 months or something like that. It was ridiculous, and it's still it still kind of clicks, to be honest. But
Oh man.
Yeah. So I hope everybody can kind of learn from our mistakes. Don't do that. So
No.
Crazy. And just to kind of bring this full circle here, Adam, if anybody else is following along, with anything in the hunting industry, we all know that, there's a lot of things going on with the public lands and the government kind of trying to transfer over the ownership from the federal to the state governments. Now this was all done on public land, correct?
100% public.
So all right, so it's 100% public land. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually own a company that gives back to public land. Is that right?
Yes, we do. So Grizzly Bean Coffee Company is the company that you're talking about.
Yeah, and Grizzly Bean is your company?
It is.
Okay.
It was actually founded, or the idea was thought of in the Montana mountains on this particular trip that I'm talking about. We were, I think, it may be the first or the second day in on our trip, and it was the first time that I was going to be able to break out my jet boil. I had bought a French press for the jet boil, and I brought some, coffee that I got from the grocery store before we left, and I get out there to boil me some coffee, and it was just horrible. And I thought to myself, I'm a coffee guy. That's what I like. It's one of my vices, I guess you could say. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to have coffee in the backcountry, because now I'm stuck out here an entire week with absolutely no coffee. So I really developed this idea while I was out there that I would like to be able to provide backpackers, hunters, and military personnel a travel pack, like a small, almost like a single serve, but what I'm end up doing is a double serve pack of freshly roasted coffee to take on your hunting trips, and not to be an instant coffee, but to also develop ways to be able to brew your coffee in the field. So for the past 2 years, ever since that's happened, I've found the coffee. I'm now roasting my own coffee, and I sell 12-ounce bags. I sell 5-ounce bags, and we're in the process, and we're in the testing phase of making that double serve pack and process a reality. So there's a couple of ways that we're doing it. We're selling it in that double serve. We have a small filter that you can do the pour over process in the field, and it's big as a piece of cardboard. You stick it over your coffee cup, you put coffee in it, you boil your water, and you pour your water over your coffee, and you have coffee better than you would make it at home out of a drip machine. And really that's what I was going for. I wanted coffee that you could take in the backcountry, and you could just have a little bit of the creature comforts out in the field, whether, again, that's military or backpack hunters. And I also thought, there's not a coffee company that supports the views of hunters that I knew of, and conservation. There's a lot of niche products out there in the industry that are doing that support hunters and have that kind of the lifestyle brand of hunting. And there's just not in the coffee area. So I thought, why not bring that to hunters, and also a portion of the proceeds of the profits that we make as a company go back into conservation. And not only that, we have donated to mission work, conservation groups like BHA, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and these are some groups that we're going to support in some different ways that we're going to support, but also National Wild Turkey Federation. That's the three we've identified. And we also want to give back to veterans, and we're looking for some veterans groups to give back to. And so this coffee isn't how I make my living. It's a side hobby. It's something I would love to do in the future and to support conservation. So it's not like we're making a living off of it, so I can definitely get back the profits that we make. So it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I've obviously tried your coffee. I love it. And for everybody who doesn't know, I'm a coffee fiend. So, I mean, the way I looked at this whenever I first heard, or found out about the Grizzly Bean coffee was, what? I drink so much coffee, on a daily basis anyway. If I can scratch my caffeine itch while, supporting conservation and, in any small way that I can help in that cause, I'm all about it. So, and besides that, the coffee is just, tastes good anyway. So, Hey,
it's roasted. It's roasted almost to the week or 2 weeks when you buy it. That's the way we feel about it. You buy coffee off the shelf at the grocery store. It's been sitting there weeks. Plus, it's been sitting in a warehouse. It's been sitting somewhere months. When you buy my coffee, it's literally freshly roasted. So you're getting like you said when we talked earlier, your mailbox with the aroma coming from it.
Dude, it did too. Like I opened it up and I just I caught a cloud of like that nice, warm, homey coffee scent. Just a big cloud of it just hit me in the face. And I was like, oh, this is, I'm going to go make a cup of like this right now. And then it was like, I don't know, 6:30 in the evening. Like, so,
oh, no.
Yeah. This is going to be a late night anyway, so lots of podcasting work to do. So it's kind of like a win-win-win. But Anyways, I tell you what, Adam, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you, coming on the show and, sharing your story with us. Obviously, I really identify with, and I really can appreciate the story about you living on the eastern coast and actually going out and going through the process and doing this western hunt. And I think, like we were talking about earlier in the conversation, I feel like a lot of our listeners who are on like our side of the world, I feel like they can all kind of appreciate that as well. So, thank you for just, sharing that story and hopefully, if anybody out there is listening and they're thinking about doing something like this, it's definitely possible. If you want to do it, you just kind of put a little bit of work in and go for it. So either way, just want to thanks for sharing the story, man.
Hey, I really appreciate you letting me come on and share the story. I hope maybe next year we can share a successful elk hunt story. And I'll echo what you said. If you're out there in the east and you keep daydreaming about going hunting west, stop daydreaming. There's so much public land out there that we own as hunters, and you should take advantage of that. You should start doing the research, start preparing. If you don't do it this year, just set a date. Set a date to when you're going to go, and you go do that.
Absolutely. But hey, man, thanks again for coming on the show, Adam. Again, I really appreciate it. And I'll be sure to link over, to grizzlybeancoffee.com in the show notes. So if anybody else is interested in trying your coffee, and, again, kind of helping to support that fight, it would be nice and readily accessible to everybody. So go ahead and definitely check that out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
I appreciate that. And also, I have a hunting blog, so if anyone goes, go check that out. Any more stories, and I write a lot about going out west, tag draw. I did an article lately on drawing tags for elk in the west. It's called chasethemountain.com, so go check that out too if you get a chance.
Perfect. Yep, I'll link to that as well then. And again, thank you so much for coming on, Adam. You have a great evening.
You too. Thanks, Adam. Talk to you soon.
Okay, and thank you all for listening to the Huntsman's Journal podcast. This was episode 11, and I really do appreciate you listening. As always, if you do like what you are hearing, go ahead and it takes about 2 minutes to leave us a rating or review on iTunes, and I would really appreciate it. I believe we've already got 12 or 13 5-star reviews on iTunes, so thank you to all of you that have taken the time to leave us a review. And for those of you who don't, again, it only takes about 2 minutes, and it does really go a long way. So thank you in advance. Also, as usual, if you have a hunting story of your own that you'd like to share with the audience, or that you'd like to have turned into a radio show style episode, go ahead and reach out to us via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of the social media channels, or on our website at thehuntsmansjournalpodcast.com, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. And other than that, I do just want to wrap up the show with another quick shout out to Grizzly Bean Coffee. If you're a coffee drinker and if you're interested in promoting conservation and keeping public lands public and all the things that all of us as hunters and conservationists are striving for, a portion of the proceeds do go to help fund those efforts. So again, if you are a coffee drinker and you want to help kind of help the cause, it's a win-win. So other than that, thank you all again so much for tuning in. I appreciate you joining me for another episode of the Huntsman's Journal podcast. I'm your host, Adam Huntsman. We'll see you next week with another hunting story.